Today we are telling you the incredible story of Colonel Paris Davis, a Green Beret officer whose heroism at Vietnam earned him the Medal of Honor nearly 6 decades later. 58 years later. That's pretty amazing. What happened is, I do not know how, but his paperwork for the Medal of Honor was lost at two separate times. Fortunately for him, he had people looking into it and saying, hey, where did it go? And recreated a lot of the paperwork that was in there. Now, Paris Hilton was born May 13th, 1939 in Cleveland, Ohio. He grew up in the 1940s and 50s. He excelled in sports, academics, and he went on to attend the Southern University and A&M College in Louisiana, where he joined the ROTC and graduated with a commission at a U.S. Army office as a U.S. Army officer in 1962. Davis was part of the new generation of African American officers entering a still segregated military environment determined to break barriers. I'll tell you right now, part of what is important to me is the fact that this didn't bother him. He still moved on forward. The medal wasn't what drove him. He still retired from the military as a colonel. Even though he was in a segregated military, even though they lost his paperwork twice, he was an amazing man. And this makes a difference. And this is an important one to me because recently I have had problems with the VA. You can watch that video on it here if you want. But all of us have had some sort of problems with the military for veterans, whether it be records being lost at some point in time or trying to get VA disability. With me, it was trying to see the mental health facility, and he took it in stride and decided, hey, I'm a soldier. The soldier is ready to do what needs to be done. I'm in command, and I need to take care of my troops, and the military is my family. Plenty of these members are in my family. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to read over the citation. Captain Paris Davis, commander of Detachment A-321 of the 5th Special Forces Group Airborne of the 1st Special Forces, distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while serving as an advisor on the 883rd Regional Force Company, Army of the Republic of Vietnam, during combat operations against an armed enemy in the vicinity of the Bong Son Republic of Vietnam on June 17th to 18th, 1965. Captain Davis and three other U.S. Special Forces advisors accompanied the Vietnamese 883rd Regional Force Division on its first combat mission, a daring nighttime raid against the Viet Cong Regional Headquarters, housing a superior enemy force. Captain Davis' advice and leaderships allowed the company to gain the tactical advantage, allowing it to surprise the unexpected enemy force and kill approximately 100 enemy soldiers. While returning from the successful raid, the Regional Force Company was ambushed and sustained several casualties. Captain Davis constantly exposed himself to hostile small arms fire to rally the inexperienced and disorganized company. He expertly directed both the artillery and small arms fire, enabling other elements of the company to reach his position. Although wounded in the leg, he aided in the evacuation of other wounded men of his unit, but refused medical evacuation himself. Following the arrival of air support, Captain Davis directed artillery fire within 30 meters of his own position in an attempt to halt the enemy's advance. Then, with a complete disregard for his own life, he braved intense enemy fire across an open field to rescue his seriously wounded and immobilized team sergeant. While carrying the sergeant up a hill to a position of relatively safe, Captain Davis was again wounded by an enemy fire. Despite two painful wounds, Captain Davis again refused medical evacuation, remained with the troops, and fought bravely and provided pivotal leadership and inspiration to the Regional Force Company as they repelled several Viet Cong assaults on the position. Over a period of several hours, when federal reinforcements finally arrived, Captain Davis again refused medical evacuation until he had recovered a U.S. advisor under his command who had been wounded during the initial ambush and presumed dead. While personally recovering the wounded soldier, he found him severely wounded but still clinging to life. Captain Davis directed the helicopter extraction of his wounded colleague, not leaving the battlefield himself until after all friendly forces were recovered or medically evacuated. Captain Davis's heroism and selflessness, above and beyond the call of duty at the risk of his own life, are in keeping with the highest traditions of the military services and reflect great credits upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. And with that right there, I am just going to show a couple pictures. This is him when he was younger. And right here is another picture of him when he was actually in Vietnam. Both are pretty good pictures. And I am going to share with you a video that they thought was important to be able to play.
We had three people that were on the action with me, all Americans, but they were at different locations when the battle started. The first person that I went after was a person named Brown. Brown had been shot near the temple of his head. It took me about an hour and a half to get to him. I found a way to grab him under his armpits and drag him about 150 yards to a place where he could be evacuated in a helicopter. And I remember very distinctly when I got there, he said, "Sir, am I about to die?" And I said, "Not before me." You're about to cross the street. A little kid runs out in front of you. You see a car coming. You forget about the car. You think about the little kid. You grab him, you pick him up, and you run across the rest of the street. I say, when you do something like that, you don't know what you're doing, but you do it, and in the end, it's exactly what you wanted to do. One of the things that I thought was really important in being able to be in charge of troops is to be able to share with them. And one of the things we always talked about, even in training, was courage. It was a thing that came over you at a moment you least expected it, and something you did that showed others that you were still with them. It was something that made you feel good. You didn't know why. At the same time, you were just scared to death. That's when a person does something not for his betterment, but for the betterment of the action he's about to take. It makes everyone on the other side feel better, know better, and glad that they are where they are. And that's usually being an American.
He's a pretty amazing man in what he did and what some of his viewpoints were. What's amazing is from the research I've done, every person they spoke to said that he was a great commander and they loved working with him. And actually, he was the best commander that they ever had. And that's pretty amazing. for somebody that was in the Green Beret. Um, Let me see. Right here is words of wisdom. I'm sorry about these pop-ups here. I didn't intend for those to be there. But right here is it's just a 17-second clip, but I found
As
this
fast
very
as you
interesting.
can. Find some recruiter that's out there. Find some place where you can sign up and stay in the military because it'll be family too. As fast as you can.
Even after all they'd been through, he is still fighting for people to join the military. And I agree with him on that. I think the military is great for people. Service, you get to serve the country and this great nation. And when you do that, a lot comes back to you as well. Right here is just a comment that he made. Again, I did not plan on these pop-ups being here. Let me get rid of these. But here is just a comment made that Paris Davis proved that real leadership isn't about chasing medals, but about carrying your men through the hell and refusing to let the history forget it. That's a pretty amazing statement. And I am just going to go through some of the other places that I went through for history, for being able to look up information. I'm not going to be able to go through all of it, but I always go to Wikipedia. The information is always correct, but it gives you a little bit of background information on who they are, and I want to be able to tell you where you can go to be able to find out some additional information. But as you can tell he Davis was commissioned as a reservist component in June of 1959 and earned the airborne and ranger qualifications in the 60s and special forces qualifications in 1962. And he went over to South Korea, South Vietnam, Okinawa, Japan. So he did a lot before he actually was fighting in Vietnam. And if I remember correctly, he did more than one tour, which you don't have to do. So he definitely was a soldier and wanted to be able to do as much as possible. Right there is a good picture of him when he was younger. But just right there is a picture of him getting the citation. And now later in life, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Rangers. And in 2004, the Military Intelligence Corps Association chapters were honored to have Colonel Paris Davis Medal of Honor recipient as a special guest, coordinated by leadership of the Mika organization. Charles Atkins of Mika Potomac chapter, President Major General Greg Potter presented the Nelson Award to Colonel Davis, witnessed by over 200 participants. But this is pretty amazing, some of the stuff that he has done. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to the Army. Again, I love this picture right there of him when he was younger. But you learn a lot of information about him by going through this. And I like this one because it has a lot of pictures with him and his family. He considered the military his family, but he did have a regular family as well. And he appeared to be real close to that family and considered them extremely important to him. And right here is pictures of probably recreations of him in the military. And right here I'll actually explain the battle around Bong Son in the Republic of Vietnam. And again, that picture keeps coming up. So that appears to be a very, very popular picture. But he was referred to as, they're referred to as quiet professionals in the special forces. Quiet professionals with the special forces. And right here is just different pictures of the ceremony and who he was. And right there is just a reading of some of the things that they thought was important for you to be able to see. But one of the things I wanted to do is just go through a lot of this information where it does have different news that it talked about. But there's a video down here that I want you to be able to see.
158 years ago today, in this White House, President Lincoln was putting the final touches on his second inaugural address. And he wrote, "Let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, and care for him who shall have borne the battle." Today, 58 years after he bore the battle, we honor a true hero of our nation, Colonel Paris Davis. Right away, it was clear that Paris was a born warrior. He became an Army Ranger. Then he jumped at the chance to join the Green Berets, becoming one of the nation's first black Special Forces officers.
I really volunteered for Special Forces when it became available. No one knew anything about Special Forces, and it was sort of the way the president explained it was not in any detail. He just sort of gave you an inclination that it might be something if you have the skills, you might be able to get in there and do some good.
You know, in the early hours of June 18, 1965, then Captain Davis and his team with 3 of the Green Berets were wrapping up a job well done. And together, they just finished a 10-mile march through the night to support a company of South Vietnamese soldiers on their first combat mission, a raid against the Viet Cong, thick in the jungle of Bong Son. The raid was a success. But as the sun began to rise, the men heard that haunting sound ring out. A bugle, a sure sign of a counterattack. Within minutes, the jungle lit up with enemy fire. Hundreds of Viet Cong began to swarm Captain Davis and his team, pinning them down in a rice paddy with no cover.
It was just Brown, Reinberg, and Wall, and myself. And so when Reinberg was shot, we got him up the hill with the help of one of the gunners on one of the other choppers. When Wall was shot, he was there, and I told you, he was in that buffalo rub where we took those. He said it was only 4 rounds. I said it was 5 rounds. We only talked about one, but that guy, that sniper, was shooting his foot and his leg. And then there was Brown, who was shot in the temple, who wasn't quite dead when I got out to him. I can remember him saying, "Am I going to die?" And I remember saying, "Not before me."
Captain Davis realized he was the last American standing. Without hesitation, he yelled, "I'm coming for you." He called in friendly fire and gave a little bit of cover to run out and rescue his team. On his first attempt to get to Team Sergeant, Captain Davis was shot in the arm and had to turn back. Captain Davis waited for another window and sprinted back out again. But his team sergeant was stuck. Captain Davis couldn't fully break him free before he had to return to cover. He didn't give up, though. That's not the Green Beret way. For his 3rd time, as enemy fire rained down him, he ran out. Captain Davis freed his team sergeant, threw him over his shoulder, and started carrying up the hill to safety. Captain Davis got about halfway up the hill before a bullet pierced his leg. Then, in front of him, another Green Beret sergeant who had just arrived to the battle to reinforce the team was shot in the chest and now needed to be rescued as well. Captain Davis limped up the hill with his team sergeant on his shoulder. He'd been fighting for around 10 hours, but Captain Davis didn't hesitate. He went back down the hill to retrieve the reinforcement who had been just shot in the chest, all 240 pounds of him. Next, Captain Davis ran to his weapons specialist, who was struck in that cesspit. Viet Cong fighters continued to spray gunfire across the field as Captain Davis threw his teammate a rope, pulled him out, and began to haul him up the hill as well. By this time, the rescue helicopter had landed. Captain Davis' commander gave him a direct order: "Get on board." Davis' response was just as direct. "Sir," he said, "I'm just not going to leave. I still have an American out there." He pinpointed the medic's position and began crawling toward him, with gunfire and grenades still exploding around him.
The interesting thing was we started that thing with, we could see the sun coming up. When we finished, we could see the sun going down. It was the symmetry there. It's really poetic in a sense. At the same time, you can see the similarities. It's almost like reading something from Hemingway.
Paris, you are everything this medal means. I mean everything this medal means. And look, you're everything our generation aspired to be. You're everything our nation is at our best. Brave and big-hearted, determined and devoted, selfless and steadfast. American. American.
And this is not heroic. This is military. If you're in charge, you have to take charge. And the thing about it, if it's a battle like that, I used to say this thing, and it comes out of a book called by Rupert Brooks. He's a English World War I soldier who was also a poet. I'm just going to recite the first two lines that I always said. If I should die, remember only this of me, that some corner of a foreign field. He used to say forever England, and I used to say forever America.
Pretty amazing, if you ask me. So, whenever you are thinking that the military hasn't done everything they can for you, remember there are people like him who have fought for the military, considered the members of the military his family, and even when a lot of us would have considered this to be a bad situation, he found a way to be able to make it work. Right here is just an Instagram picture of him talking about the long overdue medal and the warrior who never quit, and that Colonel Paris Davis proved that real leadership isn't about chasing medals, but about carrying your men through the hell and refusing to let history forget it. That's pretty amazing to me. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to go to that one. I'm going to go back up to this one and just finish what I was saying. Actually, let's go back to the Army one because I really love that picture on the Army one. I really do. But Colonel Paris Davis was absolutely an American hero. Not only in my opinion, but the opinion of a lot of people. What he did was extraordinary, and he fought for his men, was loved by his men, and a lot of his men fought for him. Not only did they recreate those records once they were lost, but they had to do it a second time, and they really fought for it as well. In fact, there's an article here that if I still have it, well, I don't have that one. But basically, it was, well, it might be here a little bit down. Yeah, look at all those awards that he won. No, it was not in Wikipedia that I'd seen it. Apparently, I lost the page I was looking for. But basically, it was the page where it was talking about how hard they fought. And well, one person says, hey, I may not be that bright, but I am dedicated into making sure that this happens. And he contacted a lot of his sources, which included the Secretaries of Defense and Secretary of the Navy, to be able to push for him. And it was just sort of amazing that they were willing to work that hard to be able to get him where he was. I wish I would have saved that one page. Normally, I don't lose them, but right now you get a pretty good idea of who he was and a pretty good idea of a lot of the men that fought for him to be able to get him going and be able to make him the man that he is. And I am more than proud to call this man brother in arms and proud that he was in our military and glad that he was there. And any time that you're having problems, you can remember, hey, there is somebody like Colonel Paris Davis who had to wait 6 decades almost to be able to get an award that he wore earned because it got lost in the military. And that he had plenty of people fighting for him. And there are plenty of good people in the military that will fight for you as well. That might even include the VA, that might include congressional representatives, but there are people who will fight for you and try to make the situations as good as possible. And I love being able to tell these stories. I love being able to do the research on them. And I love finding out about these great men. I consider it a sense of honor on my part. Now, if you like hearing about these, make certain that you like this video. Make certain that you comment on it. Make certain that you share it. Because the more you comment, the more you share, the more and you like it, the more we will be able to do these and the easier it will become. And we can potentially do more in the future. But for now, this is Chris Williams. I'm with the Wheels Up. And I want to thank you for your time and have a great day. Thank you much.